We'll take our next subject and our next guest. The United Kingdom and Kenya co-hosted a global education summit last week, Thursday, designed to raise billions of dollars for public education in up to 90 countries, which are home to more than 80% of the world's out-of-school children. Nigeria's President Buhari addressed leaders at the event. The summit happened as governments face huge challenges due to COVID-19 pandemic-related disruptions. Decades of slow but steady progress in educating more children around the world abruptly ended in 2020 when schools closed in most countries. The ongoing disruption to children's education has highlighted the need for governments to devote more resources to address the long-standing inequalities in education systems exacerbated by the pandemic. Joining me to discuss this is a foremost educationist and a retired professor of statistics in the Department of Statistics at the University of Ibadan. Good to have you on the program, Professor Biyi Afonja. Thank you very much for joining us.
Nice to be with you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Well, quickly, I would like you to help us make sense of the Global Education Summit and particularly President Muhammadu Buhari's expression of commitment over the next 5 years to increasing funding for education in Nigeria. He has promised that there will be a 50% increment in the proportion of the budget of Nigeria for education. How significant is that, and how is that important? How should that be important to us as Nigerians and stakeholders?
Well, thank you, Ruben. It's a most significant gesture which we should all appreciate. But the appreciation and the gesture will have meaning when the whole thing is implemented to the letters. We have had promises upon promises before, agreements upon agreements, which are never kept. If this is implemented and in the spirit of which it was made, then it's a very significant step forward. There are many issues that arise from that, of course. I don't know whether you want me to raise them now.
Yes, please go ahead, sir.
Good. Now, you want to increase the profile of girl education. Here, in Nigeria in particular, and perhaps most of Africa, the issue of attitude of parents is paramount. No matter how much effort, how much money government may put into funding education, particularly girls' education, if the parents are thus to educating girls, all come to nothing. We have many parents who don't believe in educating girls. So one important action which must be taken in implementing the great effort is to educate and change the attitude of parents. And I want to give one or two instances of where the importance of parents comes in. My mother married my father because she believed in education. According to her, she went to my village, Joga, specifically because she believed that parents in that village send their children to school. And that if she married in that village, she was guaranteed education for her children. Then my father, just before he died, his last words to his siblings were send my children to school. And his siblings faithfully obeyed that unwritten will and testament. Sent me and my brother, Dr. Afonja, to school. That's how we got to where we are today. So if parents don't make effort, if parents still believe that educating girls is waste of money, then no matter how much money you may put in, you won't get anywhere. That's the first point I want to make. The second point is we talk of lack of adequate funding. Yes, I agree. Governments don't put enough fund into education. Invariably, when politicians are campaigning, and it's almost true all over the world, they promise hell and fire. They tell you that education is top priority, but that's only on paper. If only they could see it as foundation of everything, as a claim, and then see it in this light of what I put in my book on university governance, that education is a basic infrastructure, a fundamental infrastructure of all infrastructures needed for education and human development. If they get that right, that education is infrastructure for all infrastructures, bridges, buildings, those are physical infrastructures. But educate, you can get engineers, you will get doctors. And I could see Prime Minister Boris Johnson and Prime Minister Uhuru Kenyatta emphasizing this point in a way in their submissions. So that's the first point. I think the second one is that funding of education is the responsibility of all of us. You don't leave funding of education to the Dangotes of this world alone. Many people, of course, are pitching in. But I'd like to us to see it as education is seen as total stakeholder investment in education. The stakeholders are the beneficiaries and the benefactors. We must all join to hand together and invest in education. Another point is the gap between the educated, the rural people, and the elite class is widening and widening and widening. If anything, the COVID-19 has made it worse. When children are taken out of school and told to learn through internet, how many village boys and girls have access to internet? How many boys and girls of the poor have access to internet? In any event, you can only have internet where there's guaranteed electricity supply. So you can see the gap widening and widening. Those who can afford it, who are the elites, will have their children benefit from this online kind of school. And you have left the poor children in the villages right in the air.
But Prof,
I think those are the preliminary remarks I want to make.
Yeah, Prof.
So when, yes.
Yeah, President Buhari has been
Yes.
Heavily criticized for attending that Global Education Summit. One former senator said, well, what was President Buhari doing there, given his own level of education? Do you think that it was a bad idea for Nigeria to have been at the table where the United Kingdom and others are saying they would like to provide funding and support for education in at least 90 countries around the world?
Well, I viewed your program on the response to that point. Quite frankly, I don't think the senator, with all due respect, got it right. You can't say because Buhari is not a graduate, because Buhari doesn't have a PhD, Therefore, you should not go to a world summit where people are planning to raise this education status of countries. And Buhari himself said it. Said you cannot achieve beyond your level of education. So he knows the value of it, even though his own education level may not be that as high as you imagine. But at least I believe he did the right thing in going. If he didn't go, I would have been disappointed.
Well, Prof, again, another
So
concern.
to me, I think...
Please go ahead, sir.
Yes. So to me, I think politicians be very careful when they criticize those in government. And one other point which should have been emphasized is that, okay, Buhari went there, he promised this, he promised that, all right. Let him come home and implement what he promised. That's more important than whether he has paid you or not. Thank you.
Yes, but there is also this issue about the security situation in the country. President Buhari has promised that, going forward, there will be increased funding for education. But of what effect would that be if there is no security in major parts of the country? You can throw in money, but will money solve the problem? How far can throwing money at the problem go?
You are wasting money if there's no security. No question about that. You will not be able to go to school. You will not be able to go to work. I have some twin questions in my autobiography, in his hands. The autobiography of a Nigerian village boy. After discussing kidnappings and all kinds of things going on all over the world, and particularly in this country, I asked a twin question. Where is safety? Who is safe? So you can't go to school if you are not safe. You can't go to a school where you can be kidnapped anytime. So security is paramount. And with all due respect to our president, he had been making all the efforts possible. But I would have wished he achieved more in the light of his promise, as far back as I think 15 or 16, that he will end this Boko Haram menace at a certain time. And I'm sorry, he has not really not been able to do so. Maybe due to no fault of his, because it's a gigantic problem. It's huge. And I hate to say it, perhaps only God will help us.
Well, but Prof, I mean, you've been Commissioner of Education in the Western region under the, I think, the Awolowo government. You've been Pro-Chancellor, Chairman, Governing Council of the Olabisi Onabanjo University. ASU is a big elephant in the room in the education system in Nigeria. Tomorrow, ASU is inviting or insisting that government must come to the table again because government has not kept its promises. How do we keep our university system or the education system protected from these incessant strikes and this unending perennial argument over agreements that are not respected? From your experience, what do you think the problem is?
Thank you, Ruben. For government to make promises, sign agreement, and keep to the words of agreement. You see, I want to ask Nigerians, if you are part of ASU, and government keep promising, we give you this, we give you that, and they get you back to the classroom, and government doesn't implement what is agreed upon, what do you do? And I would like Nigerians to suggest alternative to strike. Who would like strike? Strike is no good. I've been a university child my life. I have children who went to school, universities. It's not good for anybody. You lock up universities for 1 year. It's not good for any nation. So I personally want suggestions as to what is the alternative to strike by ASU. as bad as strike is, what is the alternative? Because as far as they are concerned, it appears that strike is the only language that governments understand. And they are being more or less proven right. It's when they are close to strike, the government then gets up and says, okay, let's meet. So if people can think of alternatives to strike, oh, that would be great. That would be great. Let's find viable alternatives to strike so that the teachers can stay in the classroom and earn what they should earn for what they do. And that is what takes me to the issue of credibility. I mean, government shouldn't just be making promises and promises like a politician do when they are campaigning. Any politician will promise hell and fire. It's virtually the same all over the world. In fact, when I was thinking about this program, I thought of one thing. We should now begin to develop a lie index. Lie index. Perhaps political scientists and statisticians find a way of coming out with a lie index of lying. We need to judge our politicians, particularly presidential candidates. See how much lie they tell, how much they fulfill their promises. That may get somewhere. Because when you promise and you don't implement, it's a great pity.
Well, Prof.
So, in short,
yes? Oftentimes, when we come to the issue of education, Nigerians tend to blame the federal government. And that's why in the last few days they've been saying, President Buhari, he has not kept promises. What is he doing at an international conference? What should be the role of state governments? Because I assume, I may be wrong, that state governments are also part of the problem. But oftentimes here in Nigeria, we tend to blame just the federal government without paying attention to the responsibility of state governments. What is the problem at the other levels of government?
Well, one of the greatest problems facing state governments is that they don't have money. They don't have as much as federal government does. So they tend to rely too much on federal government. And in most cases, many of these state governments established universities which they could not fund. And having established universities, they now look up to federal government to help them. So, and like I said earlier, total stakeholder investment in education is what we need. It's not even leaving to federal government alone or state government. Individuals should be involved. Many individuals are certainly trying by endowing chairs, by donations and whatnot. But honestly, it would be wrong to put all the blame at the doorsteps of the federal government. That would be wrong. That would be totally wrong.
Well, Prof, you were Commissioner for Education in the Western region. You were head of the Department of Statistics at the University of Ibadan. You were also Pro-Chancellor and Chairman of the Governing Council of Olabisi Onabanjo at the time. Would you like to share with us some of the highlights of your experience as documented in about 4 books now?
Fantastic. I'm just sending to you a whole bundle of books, about 5 of them, which chronicle my experiences, right from the Department of Statistics to my Commissioner's Day, to my time as Chairman, Governing Council, Ogun State College of Education, now Taisho Ani College of Education, then Pro-Chancellor and Chairman of Council, Olabisi Onabanjo University. And of course, I was on the Governing Council of Ife University, now Obafemi Awolowo University. So one can reasonably be proud of some rich background, and one has an idea of what he's talking about. I've documented my experience in about 3 publications. 1, my autobiography, In His Hands, that's the hand of God. The autobiography of a Nigerian village boy. 2, or before the second one, I gave a lecture titled Philosophy and Funding of Tertiary Education in Nigeria. And tangentially, a lecture titled Nigeria, a Nation in Dilemma. Nigeria, a Nation in Dilemma. I raised many issues, including education. And finally, for now, because I'm still writing, I smell a rat. A pro-chancellor's adventures in university governance in Nigeria. That's the latest of all the books. My experiences are documented, and they are rich experiences, starting from the time a student is admitted to university. And I noticed that one of the biggest problems and source of corruption is admission. Then, issue of appointment of vice chancellors, that's another headache area. And of recent, you've seen what went on in the University of Lagos, what went on in the University in Oye, what went on in Lagos State University. To keep on counting, I mean, each time a new vice chancellor will be appointed, there's always a problem. So I discussed that issue very seriously in the last book, relationship with the council and the government. If I may digress a little bit, the issue of council and management and government through the visitor is well played out in the case of First Bank of Nigeria, where the board of directors took one decision which was not favorable to the chief executive, who somehow was able to have the ears of the First Bank, which we can call the supervising agency of the that's CBN, which we can regard as the supervising agency of the bank. So in the university system, it's council, management, exemplified by the vice chancellor, and the ball then stops at the foot of the visitor, the governor. And the governor, and including myself, pro-chancellor, we can be overbearing. We can be overbearing. Again, I gave instances in that book of where one side or the other tends to be rather to have overplayed his role. Right from the governor to the pro-chancellor to the vice-chancellor. Because if there's no proper understanding on roles, responsibilities, and relationships among all of them, there will always be friction. And it's the students that suffer in the end. So, I mean, I can go on and on, Ruben. And instead that you recall, you served with me when I was pro-chancellor and chairman of council during my first tenure. So you understand the inner working of the university system. So well, I think that's about like I can go on and on that.
Well, Prof, finally, do you see any hope that someday the education system in Nigeria would be revived, will be, transformed, and Nigeria can take its place properly as a country that can compete with the rest of the world intellectually? We started by talking about global education. Can we fit into that framework?
Well, I'm not optimist. But before I dwell on that, let me just make a correction. You said I served under Awolowo. No. I served in the military regime with Governor Oluwole Rotimi. Okay. Then he came in as a colonel. He became a brigadier general. So between 1973 and 1975. Now, on your point, I'm very optimistic. It may take us a long time. I mean, if you take a country like Singapore, they were coming to Nigeria, particularly the Western Nigeria at that time, to take palm tree seedlings to go and plant. They were very much behind, at least the Western state of Nigeria, educationally. Look at where they are today. So I haven't lost hope. Let's have leaders who know what they're about, who are sincere with the people, and not think of themselves and themselves only. And know that when they get there, it's what they can take. If they go there with the right spirit, of service, of educating people, we will get there. It may take a long time, although it's getting rather late. And personally, I'm becoming a little bit impatient and nervous. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Biyi Afonja, for joining us on this Day Live, the Sunday talk show.